Hey everyone, yeah, I have marks because my face is having the mast cell activation syndrome stuff, and it's pretty active. Anyways, I wanted to do. I know Lyme Disease Awareness Month is over, but for me, Lyme disease awareness is every day. It's in my life, and I am hoping to share my battles with it and just my story about it, and the complications I have to face every day with either doctors or with just people in my life, or just, that come across my path, basically. You see, Lyme disease is a very controversial disease. I've talked about that. It has been a debate for over 40 years now. It is basically known as an invisible illness. People can look at me and think I don't have a disability, but I do. It's a debilitating disease. It causes um, inflammation inside the body. It causes pain throughout the body. Every organ is infected by the disease, and you're not only dealing with a bacterial spirochete, you are dealing with a parasitic one as well. And Lyme disease is not the only thing you have to deal with. Unfortunately, it brings co-infections as well, which can be worse than Lyme itself. You see, I battled Bartonella, which is also known as cat scratch fever. It is basically, I don't really have, it's a biofilm that's inside the body. You can't really see, but those marks, some people think they're stretch marks, but they're actually not. They're Bartonella marks. And I also have it on my stomach, and I have some on my legs, and um, being bit by mosquitoes, even though I put bug spray on. I guess they just love me, which I don't love them, because they can carry the disease as well. They can also carry Zika, West Nile, and so much more. You see, a lot of people don't realize that ticks are not the only insects that carry this disease. There are so many other types of insects that can carry this. It doesn't take 24 to 48 hours for it to be transmitted. I've talked about it, and I've talked about it, and I've talked about it. And I'm still hoping to continue to talk about it. I wanted to do this video not just to continue spreading awareness, but I wanted to share something that I am having a difficult time dealing with. Today I went to my doctor, and he also has what I have, but he says he's healed or in remission, basically. And yet, I can understand that it's frustrating to not really know how to diagnose somebody, or what to do, even if there's a diagnosis, because this disease and just all the other stuff that I have is complicated, you know. But today I went to the doctor, came back, and I decided to actually look at my patient portal, because I wanted to actually see if he wrote down what he diagnosed me with, because he talked about my thyroid being enlarged, but in my portal it didn't show that. It showed some other things. I had someone look up the word of this diagnosis, and I can honestly say I don't agree with it, and it made me feel very bothered, because it's just another thing that us people who battle Lyme disease and other co-infections go through. We end up being told that we're hypochondriacs and or have a mental illness. That is just common, because they don't want to accept that Lyme disease is real, and chronic Lyme disease is as well. You see, I suffer from chronic Lyme disease. You know, not just myself. There's over 2 million people who are diagnosed each year with this illness. It's easy to catch. It could be transmitted by insects. It could be transmitted by blood transfusions. It could be transmitted sexually. It could be, you know, it's easy to catch, and it's hard to sit there and get rid of. You know, your best bet is to catch it in time. But even then, you could still have it alter your life. It can change the way that the body works. You see, the word that I had someone look up was called somatization. Sorry, I can't say the word. It's hard for me to say some things. But it's called somatization disorder. And the definition for it is a form of mental illness that causes one or more bodily symptoms, including pain. I don't really agree that it's a mental illness, because I've had proof of my interstitial cystitis that was based on an examination, and I also had a procedure last year to see if I could get remission for that. You see, IC is actually a connection of Lyme. I also have mast cell activation disease, which is also known as mast cell activation syndrome. That was diagnosed after my surgery by a doctor. All these other things that I've had have been diagnosed by a doctor. Either the same doctor I've had since 2015, or the urologist, or the cardiologist, or the pulmonologist. I see so many doctors because I am trying to fight for disability. You look at me, you think that I'm healthy. But you're not me. You don't see the daily battles that I go through. Yes, everybody has battles. Everybody can deal with pain for some reason, either an injury or, they were born with it. You see, the thing is that I deal with pain every day. I deal with pain in my side, my arms, my legs, my brain. I deal with a lot of inflammation. I've had blood tests ran to see how my C-reactive protein's doing, my liver enzymes is doing. Those show a high reading. My C-reactive protein was 14, and the normal reading is I think 7 or so. And my liver enzymes showed that I had mild damage to my liver. Lyme disease impacts everything inside the body. Nothing's safe. Lyme disease can cause your heart to develop heart palpitations. It can cause your kidneys to overwork. It can cause your bladder to have inflammation. It can cause so many things, But people can't get a Lyme diagnosis. And some people who look at it see that it's hard for us to get a CDC positive reading. CDC is not going to sit there and, change their guidelines to help anybody. It's like people out there realize that they're facing a negative reading before they get a positive reading. It's so hard because the tests that are out there are inaccurate. The eugenics testing only reads up to about 8 bands. And you can have a lot of positives, but you can also have indecisives that end up determining that you have a negative reading. You see, what is there to help us? What is there out there to help people who are suffering an illness that they either are going through and they don't even know, or they're being misdiagnosed? You see, it's very common for us to get a misdiagnosis before we get an accurate diagnosis. There are people who are getting a ALS diagnosis, an MS diagnosis, a Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, and the list goes on, way before they actually get told they have Lyme disease. How is it very common for us to sit there and get those, and then when we get told that we do have Lyme disease, we can't sit there and get treated because either it's not real or it doesn't happen in our city or our state, and yet you are told that you have it. But, there's not much you can do about it. You can't, physically get treatment because it's complicated, and insurance doesn't cover it. So you have to pay out of pocket, which is more complicated because it's $75,000 for one type of treatment, and it's $3,500 just for a PICC line. And that's not even including how much other types of treatment you have to go through because of not just battling Lyme itself, you're battling co-infections as well. I've learned a lot over the years about this disease. I've learned a lot also about my other things that I face. You know, I see is inflammation in the bladder, and it's uncurable. Lyme disease is uncurable. Mast cell activation disease is uncurable. It's just like there's so many things out there that we can be affected with, but there's a high connection that it's to Lyme. But it's like frowned upon that Lyme is real. It's tiresome to sit there and go to these doctors, and because you're really feeling sick and you're really in a lot of pain, and you know that stuff is wrong, but it's hard to sit there and listen to a doctor who actually told you that he knew what you had because he had it himself. And it's hard that he's backtracking and deciding to say that, hey, you basically have a mental illness. It makes you very disappointed in the fact that, there is something happening and there's proof that there's something happening. But they go back and they say that you have a mental illness, basically, because they can't really express what to do. You know, I looked up not just that word, I also found it says subjective experience of many physical symptoms with no organic causes. The cause is I was born with it. At first, I didn't know that. I found out in 2014, after I was basically unable to move, that I was sick, but I didn't know with what. I went through 12 doctors, and then I met this doctor, and he basically examined me, and he asked me a few questions, and he was like, I know what you have because I have it. And now I'm being told that, yes, I have the pain and everything that I've already been diagnosed with, but I also have a mental illness. It's okay to have mental illnesses. My brother has a mental illness, and I know I have anxiety and I have depression. It's okay to know that you have an illness, whether it's physical or mental. But it's just disappointing when your results are there, but then you basically get told something else. So, I read an article, one of my friends sent a link saying that it talked about the somatization disorder and how they're going to sit there and basically go and say it's a mental disorder, even though it's a physical disorder. Like, it's real, it's happening. But they'll sit there and say it's a mental illness now. I just really hope I can get my message out there and help other people who are dealing with having a physical illness, but then it just being passed down into a mental illness. You know, I just, I really hope I can share and just spread what's happening in my life and what may be happening to others. If you want, you can share or you can subscribe or whatever. You don't really have to. I guess I'll say until next time. Thank you.